has been involved in policy advocacy matters and has represented various industries bodies. So here's the introduction and a very warm welcome again to both our learned speakers. And we look forward to learn more about your perspectives for the benefit of industry. With this, not taking much time, I would like to request our
हाँ जी
Executive Board Member, Mr. Mahajan, S.K. Mahajan, to formally
हम्म,
welcome all the delegates and our speakers. Thank you so much again, and I hand over the dais to Mr. Mahajan. Mahajan Saab, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gurmeet sir.
आपको अप्रूव करते रहना पड़ेगा अप्रूव कमेटी से
Thank you, Mr. Gurmeet Singh, for your brief
Mahajan Saab, please unmute yourself.
about our guest. I welcome Mr. Anup Palawat, Mr. Gurmeet Singh, and, Ms. Shilpi Chaturvedi, my colleagues from Council,
जो
ladies and gentlemen.
कमेटी का अप्रूव लगता है गुरप्रीत साहब आने के
Mahajan Saab, we are not able to hear you.
करेगा सेल नहीं
Can you just check your mic, please?
Are you getting me now? Are you able to listen me?
आज जो भी आपका है ना तो एक बार वो अगर सेल करना है ना तो उसको जो इंस्टॉलेशन भी करना है ना सेल भी करना है ना उसके लिए आपको
Hello, Mr. Gurmeet Singh, are you able to listen me? Some issue. Hello, Mr. Gurmeet Singh. Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Sir, we are able to hear you.
Okay.
जी Mahajan.
प्रोसेस में आपको परमिशन लेना पड़ता है कमेटी से हाँ जी हाँ जी हाँ जी
Thank you, Mr. Gurmeet Singh. I welcome Mr. Anup Kalawat, partner in direct taxes in Deloitte, Ms. Shilpi Chaturvedi, director in direct taxes, Mr. Gurmeet Singh, executive director, ESC, my colleagues and council members, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all of you on today's session on free trade agreements.
जीवन कर रहे हैं
Before I proceed, let me mention a few words that we have been passing through a very difficult period for the last 2.5 years that has hit our not only our economy, our personal losses also. This long spell of lockdown caused by pandemic brought entire activity to halt seriously, impacting not only economy but life in general also. This I have been telling. The pandemic is not yet over. We are still to come out of the situation entirely. We are getting news all over the world that this is again, Corona is again coming and is impacting the people. Over and above, the conflict in Europe has further complicated the world trade scenario. Global chains are under strain. Several countries are facing shortages of fuel, essential supplies, and there is an air of uncertainty all around in the business. Obviously, international trade is under pressure. Free trade agreements provide a unique instrumentality to foster trade between the two countries or two or more countries. In other words, FTA allows enterprises from participating to enter the market with preferential tariffs and relatively relaxed trade barriers. In the past also, India has entered into FTAs with Bangkok and other countries, and that has resulted given good results that time. Thus, FTAs open doors for exporters in the countries, and they may otherwise find difficult to reach. Significantly, FTAs are in line with WTO norms and otherwise require equal treatment to similar for exporters to enter, and identified markets. However, let us not forget FTAs are based on principle of reciprocity, and all participating nations have to make concessions while entering into such agreements. Also, I may mention that there are various variants in international trade agreements, some wider in scope, some rather limited. Apart from FTAs, we have agreements like Preferential Trade Agreement, PTA, which is Norway now, Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA, Customs Union, Common Market, as well as Economic Union, like the one we have in Europe. India has entered into an array of FTAs as well as other trade agreements that we have signed with various countries after long negotiations. Some have been of great help to Indian industry. We have entered into trade agreements with UAE, Australia, which are recent. I hope these agreements will lead to greater acceptability of Indian products in these countries. To tell us more about what do FTAs contain and what do they entail in participating nations, we have been joined today by a team of experts from Deloitte. I am indeed grateful to our friend from Deloitte India, Mr. Anup Kalawat, partner, Ms. Shilpi Chaturvedi, both subject matter experts who have joined us to make us wiser about the intricacies of FTAs. I am sure presentation would made by them would throw light on all aspects of FTAs and how they may help in scaling the international trade and economic cooperation between India and rest of the world. Before I end, a few words about our organization, ESC, in India's greater premier export promotion organization, services electronics and software sectors since 1986. With 2,300 members, exporters spread over all over the country, ESC's story is underwinded with the growth of India's software story. Council has played a crucial role in the steering the India's ICT exports from USD 50 million in 1989 to 145 billion in 2020-21. At the same time, we have been continuously working for development of electronics industry and promoting exports from there. Last year was particularly bright. We clocked almost 43% growth in electronics exports. We engaged proactively with government, both in center and states, to create a policy and regulatory climate conducive to growth and industry, undertake series of activities, including sponsoring delegation to major markets. In last March, this March 22, ESC had organized India Soft 2022 at Pragati Madan. It was a very successful event, and I'm very happy to inform you that ESC has been awarded for excellence in the exhibition, and that was received by our Executive Director, Mr. Gurmeet Singh, recently. With these words, I once again welcome all of you to today's session. Without taking any time, I request Mr. Anup to start the session. Thank you very much.
Am I audible?
Over to Mr. Anup.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. So from the structure perspective, Shilpi will take us through the presentation, and following which, if there is any kind of hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we are able to hear you.
Yeah. So I would, given the limited time, I would request Shilpi to start the presentation. Then towards the end, if there is any discussions, I'll be happy to contribute. Shilpi, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Gurmeet and Mr. Mahajan, for your kind words, and thanks, Anup, for the welcome note. And good evening, everyone. Thank you, each one of you, for taking out time and attending this webinar on the effectiveness of foreign trade agreements. As rightly pointed out by Mr. Mahajan, the global trade and investment flows have been severely hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Indian government has entered into or reinitiated the discussions with various countries or regions for economic cooperation in order to boost the economic downturn that we had seen. As a result of these discussions, India has recently signed agreements with UAE and Australia, and others are in the pipeline. India, I think, tends to tap this global demand with advanced countries where growth has been strong in the last few years. And the free trade agreements, India sees this as an effective way to increase the country's export and set up engagements in global value chain. This is likely to boost India's export trajectory in a positive manner. With this, I will just, take you through the presentation. Just let me know if you're able to see this my screen or not. Mr. Rawat, is it visible?
It is there, madam.
Sure.
Yes, Shilpi, I am hearing you.
Sure. Thank you. So we'll be covering foreign trade agreements, and if time permits, we may also cover inbound manufacturing. Like I discussed, the free trade agreements are conceptually an agreement between two or more countries under which they agree to reduce or eliminate tariff or non-tariff barrier so that substantial trade in goods can happen between them. This is basically coming from the French origin of the theory of laissez-faire, where it means that you should allow us to do the trade with minimum intervention from the government. These agreements deal with determination of the tariff and duties that are imposed by countries on each other for imports of services or goods, and they work towards reducing these trade barriers and thereby strengthening the bilateral or multilateral trade relations that the countries have. With FTA, goods and services can be exchanged across international borders with, like I mentioned, with no government tariff or quotas, or you may also have subsidies. So the benefit could be given.
Shilpi, I think your
Yeah.
screen is not up.
शिल्पी your screen is not visible.
योगेश
Sure.
ये फोटोज आ गई तो देख लेना कोई पैलेट तो नहीं है
I'll just try to reshare it once again.
देख लेना
Now is it visible?
Yeah, yes, it is visible.
Sure, good.
It's okay.
Sure. Now, the idea of FTA is the opposite to the idea of trade protection, which a lot of countries used to follow earlier. But nonetheless, we'll come to the concepts of origin. But the domestic market also needs to be protected with while we are discussing or negotiating these elimination of trade barriers with other countries. In today's world, free trade agreements are often implemented through signing a formal or a mutual agreement, which lays down the process and the procedures to be followed so that the implementation of the intention behind this is, to the maximum benefit could be achieved out of it. FTAs have taken a central role in the development and management of trade in today's world. By FTAs, they encourage businesses in member countries to focus on producing and selling the goods that best use their resources, while other businesses import goods that are scarce or unavailable domestically. So if a country, say country A, has 5 different products or goods in which they are abundant and the quality is good and they would want to promote their export, they will be negotiating lesser tariff barriers with other countries while they are importing. Further, if the country A needs some kind of domestic goods which are scarce in their country, they would want the import to be cheaper so that the
Hello?
domestic industries can work on these raw materials or these goods which are domestically unavailable and boost their production. That's the basic framework. FTAs facilitate the mix of local production and foreign trade, which in turn helps the economies to boost the growth. They also help in diversifying supply chain because it makes it easier and cheaper for their businesses to facilitate trade across the borders. From a consumer's point of view, FTAs help the consumer of both the country to get variety and affordability of products. FTAs, sorry, there's a little bit of disturbance. Can I request you to put your phone on mute?
Members are requested to mute themselves. Please mute yourself. You, Mr. Dilip Singh.
Sure, thank you. Like I mentioned earlier, in today's world, FTAs are implemented by making a formal agreement between the two countries. There could be various methods of getting into this agreement, which may have different, ambit or the concept of the agreement between the two countries. One method is called preferential trade agreements, which is also known as PTAs, where two or more countries agree upon giving a preferential treatment to certain products. So it's a positive list of products which are agreed between the countries, and a preferential treatment will be given by reducing the duties only in respect of those products. For example, this could be a Mercosur PTA, where Mercosur is a block of trade of companies, including of Paraguay, Uruguay Peninsula, and I think there's one more country. Just give me a moment. And South America, sorry. And these countries, there's a list of somewhere around 450 agreements, which is items which are agreed between these two countries, where they give a preferential trade by reducing duties in respect of those treatments. The second method is a regional trade agreement, where certain regions come together and agree that between these countries, these defined goods will be given a preferential treatment, or the duties will be reduced. Some of the examples are the India-Japan, Korea-Malaysia, or the India-ASEAN regional trade agreement. The other method is an economic partnership agreement, where the economic arrangement also tries, by that we try to eliminate the barrier of free trade movement of goods and services. Along with the product and the services, an investment is also agreed by the countries, which can help in boosting the trade within the country. A very good example of this is the India-Japan Economic Partnership Agreement, where both the countries, like Japan, fulfills its investment also while developing the infrastructure around railways and roadways to India. And that also helps in boosting the domestic market. The fourth method is a comprehensive economic cooperative agreement. It is, in addition to agreeing to a reduced rate of tariff for goods and services, investment, mutual recognition, identifying the intellectual property and commerce. There are mutual discussions on these aspects also. Examples of these could be the India-Singapore CCA or the India-Malaysia CCA. The fifth one is the comprehensive economic partnership agreement, where the additional focus is also done. It's a partnership between two countries. So there could be trade, investment, services, or sharing of information. Having cultural exchanges between the two countries are also agreed. The recently signed India UAE CPA is an example of this kind of an agreement. Other is a customs union or a common marketplace, which is in EU is one of the examples of this, where within the members of the agreement, like a customs union, they may agree for a zero trade amongst themselves, or or agree for a lower one, lower rate of tariff for the sharing of all kinds of goods and services as compared to the rest of the world. These are some of the ways, but there is no formal structure to this arrangement. It is a negotiation between two countries, and they agree for what is beneficial to them in the most beneficial fashion. India has signed about 13 FTAs and 6 PTAs. Some of the key trade agreements that India has are with the ASEAN countries, Japan, Korea, Singapore, and the SAARC countries. India has, due to the pandemic, realized the importance of free trade agreement and is seeing this as one of the ways for it to boost domestic market and boost international trade and cooperation. Government is negotiating with European Union and with China. A feasibility study was conducted, but because of the political reason, that has been put on hold. As per media reports, the agreement with with Britain is almost at the final stages. Even with US, intentions of getting into and start negotiating on this agreements, has the intention has been agreed upon, and soon the work will start on these agreements. Now, just to give some of the examples of what kind of products get covered under FTA, this is just a sample. There could be more agreements. Like I mentioned on the Mercosur one, there is about 450, 500 products which are listed. To give you an example, suppose for the product electric motor and generators, which under a normal tariff, it was coming from a country where FTA is not signed, the tariff rate is 15% on the import of the BCD. But if it is from the ASEAN country and the benefit of the treaty is being taken, the rate could be 0 to 5%. In Japan, if it is being imported through Japan, it will be nil. Through Singapore also, it is agreed that it will be nil. So it's a 15% saving that can be done if it is imported through any of these countries where India already has some kind of a FTA or a preferential trade agreement. Some of the products that we've listed down is electric generator set, telephone sets, smartphones, video recording, microphones, speakers, IT softwares also, reception apparatus, transmission apparatus. So the list is very exhaustive, and for each of the countries where India has these agreements with, we'll have to do a detailed study to understand what benefit more can be achieved out of this. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the concept of FTA is to boost your economic ties and boost your exports, but it can't be done at the cost of your domestic market. So if this benefit is given and somebody is, pumping up their goods and supplies into India, the domestic market could also suffer. And hence the concept of origin was introduced, and the basic principle of FTA is to exchange preferential treatment between members countries, and only for those goods which are manufactured or obtained in these member countries will receive these preferential treatment, because it can't be done at the cost of a domestic market. Now, how do you determine whether goods are manufactured in the member country or not? A certificate of origin needs to be issued by their country, which the other country which is importing those goods or services will have to accept. That's the basic premise. And only if the origin criteria is satisfied, because it is reciprocatory in nature, we trust that the other counterparties authorized agency would have done the checking, would have identified all the parameters are being met before giving the certificate saying that this product is satisfying all the conditions for fulfilling the origin criteria. Now in India, the compliance of this kind of a concept of origin criteria has been documented under the law itself, and the rules of origin are now monitored by the Carota rules. we'll come to the Carota rules and the details of it. But there could also be treatment could also be given. One is the origin concept. The other could also, some benefits could be given when export product is completely manufactured in exporting member countries. So origin, then the other criteria could also be given is the manufacturing of it. Some examples could be natural resources, agriculture, or forest producers. Second criteria is when it is not wholly manufactured, but some major component of it is there where the value addition was done in the country where it is being imported from. Which could mean that a regional value content was added to the products. For example, if I may say, a natural resource was taken, it was worked upon, and a new product was created out of it. That could also give you the benefit, of this certificate. Regional value content could also be one of the primary parameter. And this kind of government can agree in specific FTAs that what all kind of criteria will be agreed upon for which this certificate of origin could be issued. Now, certificate of origin, both countries consider it as a proof because it is authorized by the competent authority which is agreed in the FTA. So in the FTA, both sides of the country agree that for this kind of a product or a service, this is the competent authority which will be issuing a certificate. In some of the recent FTAs, even the format of the certificate of origin is already agreed upon and included in the agreement itself. Unless this condition is fulfilled, the authorized agency does not issue the certificate of origin. And if the certificate of origin is not there, you do not get the duty benefit of the reduced tariff rates. Guidelines for issuance and verification of CA are usually provided and agreed in the FTAs only, so that there is clear guidelines for the end customer, for the exporter, for the importer, even for the central regulatory authorities to know what are the processes to be followed and how do we verify this, kind of a process and implement it properly so that there are no issues or disputes around this. Now, some of the FTAs which I mentioned were between India and UAE. They have set to reduce tariffs of 80% of goods and give zero duty import access to 90% of India's exports to the UAE. Now, this is the aim that both the countries have put in, and they have put in a timeline of, say, 5 years, where they will every year add on more goods and monitor it and reduce more tariffs. So some of the agreements may have a very clear-cut plan of implementation on day one. Some of them may have a vision and they may want to implement it over a period of 4 or 5 years. So if maybe in year one the rate of reduction is 15% duty cut that you are getting, maybe in year 2 or year 3 the rate could be different. The Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement between India and Australia has been signed in April this year, and 85% of imports of Australian goods will be exempt from duty. That's the intention of this agreement. The India-Israel FTA is likely to be concluded by June 22, which is just happened, but it is yet to be announced. So we'll hear for more on this now. Government has also prioritized a few other countries for new FTA, which is one is Canada, Gulf Cooperation Council countries also. And like I mentioned, India and UK has formally launched negotiations, and the third round of negotiations have completed and they are likely to close in by this year. Government has also done a detailed study of the exports that India makes to which country and what are the import requirements of the country. And now a list of countries where they need to engage on these matters is being worked upon, and official negotiations have started. So in the coming years, we will see more of these agreements getting finalized and being implemented. Dhani, should I over to you?
How should we?
You are able to see my screen?
No, we cannot.
Just a moment. There's some. Is it visible now?
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Yes, it is.
Sure.
Thank you, Shilpi. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I'll be taking you through the customs inbound manufacturing scheme, which is a significant benefit useful for manufacturers with significant import dependence. So, as a background, you may be aware that India's export promotion schemes like EOUs, SEZ, EPCG, and advance authorization are currently challenged to be inconsistent with the global trade norms before the WTO. Considering this, the government of India has now shifted its focus on the age-old customs bonded warehouse schemes. Um, in 2019, the government of India launched a revamped and streamlined customs and bond manufacturing scheme primarily to attract investments into India and support its Make in India policy. There is no investment threshold, and the scheme is beneficial compared to the existing export schemes as it allows 100% domestic supplies with no export obligation and is also compliant with the WTO principles. To share, under the scheme, a manufacturer in India can import goods into a customs bonded warehouse without payment of customs duty. It offers duty deferment benefit at no interest cost. That is, improves liquidity and there is no working capital blockage. So these are the highlights of the inbound manufacturing scheme. If we can move on to the next, yeah. Just like I highlighted in terms of the key benefits, it offers duty deferment on imported goods, both on capital goods as well as raw materials under a single scheme. So, for example, if a manufacturer imports capital goods into a bonded warehouse, they're not required to pay customs duty at the time of inbonding. Customs duties are payable only at the time of clearance for home consumption. And if at all these capital goods which are brought into the bonded warehouse, if they are directly exported out of India after utilization, then the customs duties are waived off. So there's no working capital blockage as well, that you need to pay at the time of import and then probably claim a duty drawback at the time of exports. Similarly, in case of import of raw materials, there's 100% exemption on import of raw materials into a customs bonded warehouse. And if the finished product is exported out of India, then there's no need to pay duty on those imported products. And if the finished products are cleared for home consumption into the domestic market, then you need to pay the customs duty applicable on the imported raw material. So this, the scheme allows duty deferment till the time through the manufacturing cycle, through the till the time the goods are imported into the bonded warehouse, manufactured, and then cleared into the domestic market. Another important advantage is seamless warehouse to warehouse transfer. That transfer of goods from one bonded warehouse facility to another bonded facility without payment of duties is possible. So, for example, if a manufacturer imports good into its own bonded facility and then they want to give it to a job worker or a toll manufacturer for further manufacturing, or send it to their other bonded facility, that is available. And the most important advantage is there's no fixed export obligation. There's no limit on share of clearance of goods into the domestic market. No NFE requirement. Yeah. So if we can move on to the next slide. Yeah. So in terms of the approval process and the compliance requirements, this is fairly streamlined and not as complicated as to the existing export promotion schemes that we have under the foreign trade policy. For instance, there's a single point of approval. The Commissioner of Customs acts as a single point of contact for all the approvals, and there is a common application come approval form for the licensing and permission of the manufacturing requirements. In terms of timing, there's no time limit. So capital goods and also the raw materials can remain in the warehouse uh, without any time restrictions, and you can claim the duty deferment benefits till the time the goods are ultimately exported out of India or they are cleared in the domestic market. In terms of geographical restrictions, the new manufacturing facility or an existing facility can be converted into this inbound manufacturing facility, and there are no geographical restrictions. It is irrespective of its location in India. And in terms of compliances, you need to maintain all the records of manufacturing and operations digitally in the prescribed format. You need to maintain all the documentation relating to the import of raw materials, processing, and manufacture or export of goods as relevant. Next slide, please. So, just as an example of comparison of one of the existing export promotion schemes, that is advance authorization with the new inbound manufacturing scheme, uh, you know, we can just see the distinguishing points here. In the existing scheme, for instance, in advance authorization, an exporter can import inputs without payment of duty. Uh, but currently, the exemption on the IGST, which is levied as a part of customs duty, is being extended, uh, on a timely basis. There's no permanent extension to that. Uh, Earlier, it was extended up to 30th June, but recently, last week only, there's been another extension which says that, until further notice, the 30th June 2022 deadline shall be extended. Similarly, if you want to import capital goods without payment of duty against exports, you need to do it under a different scheme, which is export EPCG scheme. But under the inbound manufacturing scheme, both these benefits can be availed simultaneously under one scheme itself. In terms of validity period, the advance authorization scheme comes with a validity of typical validity of 12 months, whereas there's no validity for the inbound manufacturing scheme. It's a one-time registration. Now, the most important distinction is under the current export promotion schemes like advance authorization, you have an export obligation to fulfill. There's a minimum value addition requirement as well. Whereas under the inbound manufacturing scheme, there's no export obligation. Likewise, in case of DTA clearances of finished goods where you have claimed an import duty exemption under the advance authorization, you may have to pay, the import duties along with interest and penalties if you clear the goods into the domestic market. There's no similar restriction in the inbound manufacturing scheme. 100% domestic clearance is allowed and the duty deferment benefit is available. Again, like we discussed, the current export promotion schemes are challenged before the WTO, and there's no challenge to the inbound manufacturing scheme. And one additional benefit in the inbound manufacturing scheme is at the time of exportation, you can export goods on payment of GST, whereas under the current export promotion schemes like advance authorization and EPCG, there's a restriction to export goods on payment of GST. So, there's no automatic route to claim refund of GST in case of exports. So these were the, key distinguishing factors on how the new inbound manufacturing scheme is well placed as compared to the earlier export promotion schemes. Yeah. So with this, I'll hand it over to Shilpi.
Hi, sure. We would like to open the house for question and answers and see if somebody has any specific questions.
Shilpi, I think there are a couple of questions already in the chat box.
Sure, I'll just go through them, sir.
One question says, how do you distinguish between FTA and MFN status for a country? I think you can dwell upon that slightly.
Yes, so the difference between FTA and most favored nation, they are conceptually maybe same, but
Let me take it, Shilpi.
Sure.
See, MFN status is something which under the earlier GATT regime and under the WTO regime, every country that is a signatory to the WTO arrangement is eligible as an MFN status, and typically that is given. So the impact of the MFN status is that there will not be any discrimination against artificial discrimination about against that country uh, from similarly placed countries. Whereas when you talk about the FTA, it is a different arrangement wherein two countries negotiate, come together, and they want to explore the synergies. So what they do is that for certain identified products, they have got a reduced rate of customs duty purely as per the FTA agreement, and that is restricted only if you are a signatory to the FTA. For example, all the European Union countries are today signatories to FTA, but they are all trying to get into an all of them are having the MFN status. Even UK has got an MFN status, but they all hear that they are trying to get an FTA signed with us, so that for the identified products they get a rate which is below the merit rate of duty. I mean, so that is the concept.
Okay, thank you, Anup. Second question is, it says, can I have this inbound facility at my premises, that is factory, basically to store raw materials?
Yeah, you can have. See, that is the objective. The objective of inbound manufacturing is that you create a bond facility in the factory. If you're familiar with it, under earlier under excise regime also, we have this bonded facility that whatever be the goods which you bring into the factory, you don't pay the earlier excise duty, now customs duty on it. But as and when you consume it for the purpose of manufacture or a production, that point of time you have to pay the customs duty. Alternatively, if you are clearing the goods as such, sometimes what happens is that you may not get the from an economic order quantity perspective, you may not you may end up purchasing something more than what you require. In that case, if you want to clear as such, then at the time when you are clearing the goods as such, you will have to pay customs duty. It is also available to the traders, but for traders, like instead of in case of manufacturers, you can store it. I mean, there is no time limit. Like even if you say store it for 2 years, 3 years, there is no time limit. But if you're a trader, then there is a restriction on the time limit. I think it is 3 months or 6 months. I need to check. Probably will check and come back to you.
So Anup, the benefit could be that you can defer your payment of the duty, as in when you consume, and not do it on the first day itself.
Yeah. So typically, with the kind of disruption the logistics which is happening now, typically people have got, say, 1 or 2 months production, 1 or 2 months requirement of the raw materials in your plant. So that working capital which is blocked in the payment of customs duty, which is typically about, say, roughly 28% or 30%, could be saved. So that is a saving on the cash flow.
No, any duty exemption is there if you are using it for export, the finished goods?
Yeah. So if you are exporting it, then there is no duty applicable. So how does it work is that you import the goods. When you apply for the inbound manufacturing facility, they will ask you not exactly a SIAN, but a self-declared SIAN. So if you are familiar, say for advanced license, there is a SIAN. For other aspects, there is a SIAN. In case of inbound manufacturing, SIAN is not required, but you have to declare that, okay, for every unit manufactured, I require X, Y, Z quantity of the material. And you'll have to keep a daily accountant. So what happens is that when you manufacture the goods, on a daily basis, you will withdraw the raw material. Manufacturing, there is no challenge. But before when the rate today, assuming that you are selling 100 units, then as per your SIAN, what is the input contained in that 100 unit? For that, you will have to first file a bill of entry for the raw material which is contained in that, and you have to pay duty on it. But if the goods are, say, moving into an export, then there is no duty applicable. For that, you can claim exemption. That is already clarified by the
This registration we need to do with the customs?
Yeah. You have to, there is a prescribed application. You have to approach the customs authority. They will, typically it is granted in about say 30 days. So they will inspect your premises. Then, like if you're familiar with the earlier excise regime, they will try and look at what is your storage facility, has it got a lock and key, and whether the premises has got a gate or a compound wall, everything. If they are satisfied with those aspects, they grant you. There is no customs inspector is not required for the purpose of removal. It is a self-clearance as in the earlier excise regime. But there will be an audit at the end of the year or maybe once in 2 years. At that point of time, they will look at your documents. There are prescribed documents which shows that what is the quantity which has come in, how much has been consumed for the manufacture, at what point of time when you are removed it, whether duty has been paid or not, what is the quantity removed as such. So those details you have to maintain and you have to file a periodic return.
Okay.
Anup, just added to this is a question that is there a limitation for how long can I store the raw material in my factory, or there is no restriction?
Not if you are a manufacturer. If you are a manufacturer, you can keep it for whatever time you like. If you're a trader, there is a limitation.
Okay. Now, next is the question of, negotiations under WTO, and certain tariffs are agreed upon, which are, universally applicable for MFN countries. Once two parties enter into an FTA, how do we make sure that we do not violate any WTO regulations? I hope I'm clear.
Yeah, you are very clear. See, there is no violation because FTA is universally applied and typically by opinion makers like the US, UK, Germany, Europe. So they are generally pushing countries to sign an FTA because what happens is that, I mean, India could be an exception, but many countries, many underdeveloped countries or developing countries, if they have an FTA, they can probably sell those goods easily and in a competitive manner. For example, now there is an ask from Germany that we should be allowing import of, say, cars or kind of parts of the car into India at a lesser rate of duty than the merit rate of duty. Similarly, we have recently had an FTA as an FTA with Australia. So there the ask is that okay, a certain wine which is India is a large market for wine, but the kind of duty is very prohibitive. So what they've said is that for the wine you have to allow us to sell it in India at a lesser rate than what you allow other typical competitors. So that is how it works. And most of the proponents of free trade regime, that is Europe, US, and all, they themselves have signed a number of FTAs. China's have signed a number of FTAs. So there is no question of anybody objecting to an FTA arrangement in the WTO regime because all stakeholders have got a very, very high stake in it.
So, one question which I had was that are there any restrictions on re-exporting goods which have been imported under the FTA arrangement? Like we have signed an MOU with UAE. Now, suppose we sell electronic products, so we sell some commodity from here to UAE, and UAE, some trader there, imports it at a concessional duty because of the FTA, and then re-exports it to a third country at a higher price. Now, is that allowed, or are there some restrictions on that?
Once you export it, when it comes into India, it is treated as a normal import. And customs duty is payable on it. So there is no bar on trading. Alternatively, instead of really paying the customs duty in the example which you mentioned, somebody can keep these goods under a bonded warehouse and then re-export it. Absolutely, there is no bar on re-exporting the goods and booking the profit in India because India gets to tax it. So why should we say every other country encourage trading? India also does trading. I mean, encourage trading.
Concessional rate of duty.
Pardon?
From there, somebody from there in UAE re-exports it to say Saudi Arabia at a higher price.
Hey, see, once the goods are exported out of India, then the matter is over. No? Then what the buyer does, where does he sell? That you cannot track it, right? In global trade, it is never the case that most of the goods, if you see, the headquarter would be somewhere. Most of the sourcing today, which happens from India, it would be taken, say, by a US company or UK company. They will say, build it to US and send it to Ireland, UK, or for that matter, Rwanda. So build to ship to is always there. Otherwise, what they kind of see, look at a company like Walmart. They'll be doing so many sourcing, and so many countries they send it to. So there is no restriction on it, and all of them are sold at a higher value. India is a purchase karega. I mean, somewhere they will purchase it for 100 rupees from India. Ultimately, sell it for 200 or 300 bucks. But all what the government will look at it is not from an indirect tax perspective. Absolutely, there is no challenge. Yes, if there has to be meet to the transaction in the sense that the objective, or it should be a commercially, in the sense that the objective of the transaction should not be that, say, if it is a related party transaction and you are selling it out of say Dubai. In such cases, from an income tax perspective and from a TP perspective, they will try and look at it. Is it an arm's length price? What is the objective of it? Is it the case that profit getting transferred from India to Dubai because there is no tax on it? So those aspects will be looked at from an income tax perspective, but from a customs perspective, absolutely no challenge.
Okay. Any other members, please raise your questions if you have any.
There are many questions, then probably you can email to us and we can try and take it up. I think it's 5 o'clock is over. I don't know, maybe for 5-10 minutes we can take one or two questions. One or two questions.
Members
After
can,
that,
mail those questions to ESC and then ESC can pass it on. I think there's one more question in the inbox. Please have a look.
Yeah. I don't know where you see that. If somebody can read it out, it becomes easier for me. I'm not able to see it. Shilpi, can you read it out or something?
Yeah, so I think if we have bonded warehouse and manufacturing facility and DTA unit in the same premise, can we transfer the inputs from DTA unit to warehouse under a DC?
DTA, you cannot transfer it to warehouse because what happens is DTA, see, this bonded warehouse is a customs concept. And what it enables you is deferment of customs duty. Now, when you are importing, though you pay IGST, it is in the characteristics that it is under the character. What you are paying is a duty of customs, which is equivalent to IGST. Therefore, there is no deferment if you transfer a DTA, that is a domestically produced goods, say, to another bonded warehouse. There is no benefit of there is no benefit of deferment of taxes. Number one. Number two is that where the goods, otherwise there is no such restriction. But I don't know what you will achieve by doing it. You can, I mean, as a mover unit, there is no restriction. You can, in mover concept, what it says is that a part of the goods which is required for manufacturing will be imported. It's quite possible that a part of it will also be locally produced. Locally procured. So there is no bar on local procurement, and whether it is from a sister concern or from another unit of view, it's nothing but a local procurement from the indirect tax stance perspective. But there is no benefit to it.
Okay, I think we have had a very good session and very absorbing one. In case there are no more questions, is there any more question? If there is anyone, please speak up.
Yeah, Sajid, there is one question. If in case the certificate of origin is denied, then to which authority we can address our issues?
Under the current, so when it comes to certificate of origin, originally the concept has been that certificate of origin is issued by a prescribed authority, and therefore the customs need to follow that particular authority certificate. They cannot question it. That is the reason the law was amended and Carotar was introduced. Now, under the Carotar, the customs authorities are empowered to ask you to say that first, I mean, what is the, to kind of give you the details of the value addition and supporting documentation for that. So if you are not able to justify it, or you are not able to satisfy the officer, then it will be denied. And in case it is denied, it is a customs order. The order will show you which is the authority, because it is typically done by the appraiser level. So it will be the commissioner appeals. Who is the commissioner appeals you can apply to? That will be mentioned in the order. Please go and appeal before them. But the crux of the matter which you need to keep in mind is that you need to have some sort of a supporting document for the value addition which is happening in a particular country.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
very
you.
much. I think if there are no more questions, we'll call it a day. And I would like to thank our friends from Deloitte who have taken their time, Anup, Shilpi and Dhwani, for making those wonderful presentations, which made most of the things clear. And they've also been able to answer the questions that have been raised. Members, if you have any more questions, please write to them to ESC, and we'll share those with the Deloitte team so that they can come back to us. So once again, my thanks to all the speakers. My sincere thanks to Mr. S.K. Mahajan, member of Executive Committee of ESC, for joining us and welcoming the delegates. And sincere thanks to all the delegates also for joining the session and also showing so much of interest. I'm sure we all are slightly more knowledgeable now at the end of the session, and we know few things more as to how we can take advantage of these FTAs and how we can move forward. I hope that we'll have more such sessions in future, and we'll all will benefit from this. So thank you very much, all of you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahajan. Thank you. Thank you.